The silence that followed that moment was so loud that fans watching the livestream couldn't believe what they had just heard. Voice notes, screenshots, and the kind of evidence that not only suggests betrayal, but clearly lays it out. Jim hadn't shown them yet, but the mere fact that he claimed to have them was enough to send shockwaves through the hip-hop community, and people began searching the internet for old interviews and life stories in an attempt to find any information that could support Jim's claims. It was no longer merely rumors. Rather, it was a mystery being solved in real time with Jim Jones at its core. People kept leaving comments, urging Cameron to reply, others tagging Chrissy in every post they could find. But there was radio silence from both of them. One admirer remarked, "Why aren't they saying anything?" Another said, "This got real too fast. I feel like we're watching a whole movie." And there were no denials or affirmations. That silence just served to heighten the drama if it weren't true. Jim didn't back down, though, and later that evening, he posted on his own Instagram a dark screen with a single line of white lettering that read, "Loyalty over everything, even love." Within minutes, fans speculated about what it meant, wondering if he was done with Chrissy, Cam, or more importantly, if this was the start of a full-blown fallout between two of hip-hop's most iconic figures. Behind the scenes, sources close to Jim claimed that he hadn't been sleeping much and had been pacing, thinking, and replaying his story. Blobs picked it up, and screenshots of his story were all over the place. Talks in his mind, and the most agonizing aspect was that he still hadn't fully confronted Chrissy. According to someone familiar with the situation, Jim had only spoken metaphors and given hints in the hopes that she would confess, but she never did. Instead, continuing to act as though everything was a mysterious, anonymous account shared a screen capture of what looked to be a private event cam with Chrissy standing in the same room slightly too close. The audio was low muffled, but you could clearly hear laughter. And then there was a moment where Cam leaned in to whisper something to her. This was normal, which only made him spiral further. Jim didn't directly acknowledge the clip, but the following day, he went live again. This time, his tone was colder, less emotional, and more focused. Chrissy's smile lasted too long, and the energy between them was undeniable. The video went viral in minutes, with fans referring to it as the Camp Chrissy clip and dissecting it frame by frame. "All I ever wanted was the truth," which he stated calmly and without apology or deception. He didn't bring up Maines because everyone knew who he was referring to. He ended the romance quickly after 5 minutes, leaving fans with more questions than answers, while Chrissy was under increasing pressure and began to turn. She stopped going live on her recent posts, and even more tellingly, she failed to show up for a public appearance that she had been promoting for weeks. Fans noticed right away that she was hiding someone who commented, "I know Jim ain't playing Cameron." But she continued posting as if nothing was going on, including memes and throwback pictures. However, if you look closely, some of his captions were beginning to sound sharp, such as the one in which he wrote, "Sometimes silence is the loudest response." Fans interpreted it as a direct jab at Jim, implying that Cam wasn't going to contribute to the drama in public, but that things were boiling over behind closed doors. More insiders began to speak out anonymously, and naturally, one of them stated that there had always been a rivalry between Jim and Cam and that this was not the first time that tensions had erupted over trust issues. The source said that although they were brothers, they had their arguments, and the presence of a woman in the middle only made matters worse. Then, just when things couldn't get any messier, someone close to Chrissy claimed to have leaked the text exchange between her and Cam. The messages weren't explicit, but they did convey a warm, flirtatious tone. Nothing was incriminating, but the timing and energy suggested something more serious. Jim, on the other hand, uploaded a mysterious video to the story that showed him alone in the city at night without a caption or any music. Fans believed it to be an indication that he was separating from everyone by this point. The story had expanded beyond what anyone had anticipated, and it was now about betrayal and trust, as well as what happens when private and public lives collide in the most chaotic way. Fans were split, with some supporting Jim and others standing with others, claiming he was exaggerating without evidence. But it was obvious that the damage had been done. There were now rumors that Jim had temporarily moved out, while others said he was staying with a cousin in Harlem. Nothing was verified, but the existence of those rumors at the time caused fans to start making timelines by comparing footage from previous years and analyzing instances where Chrissy, just when everyone thought the storm might subside, Jim did something that rekindled it all in a separate interview, a pre-recorded one that aired just days after the podcast explosion. And Cam had even the smallest interaction. People who had never cared about the Dipset drama were now completely invested, treating the story as if it were a reality TV episode playing out in real life. Jim grinned, shook his head, and responded, "Loyalty, I used to think it was real, but now I know better." The interviewer attempted to probe more, but Jim remained evasive, but the meaning was obvious. Fans started to question whether Chrissy's silence meant guilt, or if she was simply overwhelmed and waiting for the storm to pass. In the meantime, she remained silent, posting no stories, making no appearances, and the silence became the loudest sound in the room. As a result, the internet wasn't. Every hour, new memes, edits, and theories appeared on social media, but one particular instance truly shocked fans. Leaked audio clips purportedly showed Jim speaking on the phone with a member of his inner circle, and his voice was heavy with fatigue. "I felt like I was the last to know what he said, as if everyone else had anticipated it but me." That one line went viral. Fans, even though the truth hadn't been fully revealed, the damage was irrefutable. Friendships were strained, trust was broken, and Jim Jones, a man known for his strength and loyalty, suddenly seemed more human and vulnerable than ever before. It was used in captions, reactions, and even auto-tune remixes. A shocking moment from a recent live podcast sent fans reeling. And Jim Jones was visibly emotional and unable to contain his emotions any longer. As the city watched, fans analyzed every word and every post, leaving one question hanging in the air. Would Jim forgive them? Or was this betrayal too deep to ever come back from the internet? During a raw, unscripted segment, Jim dropped a bombshell that left fans gasping, accusing Chrissy of betrayal and hinting at a scandalous night involving none other than Cameron. The revelation has set off what has been called one of the most explosive rants of the year, despite tensions building behind the scenes for weeks. As the podcast episode continues to go viral, there is a flurry of speculation on social media as fans try desperately to piece together what actually happened. Was it a misunderstanding? Or is there more to Cameron and Chrissy's connection than anyone realized? Emotions are running high in cryptic posts and whispers of private conversations are resurfacing, leaving everyone eager to see what happens next. Jim's words echo. The entire hip-hop community is now watching, waiting, and wondering just how deep this story truly goes. The days that followed were filled with tension, with no official statements or clarifications, just silence. And in that silence, fans created social media threads about their personal truths descended into countless theories. Some people thought Chrissy had been emotionally distant for months, while others said Cam had always carried a torch for her. No one knew the answers, but everyone had opinions, which only served to fuel the already raging fire. Then there was an unexpected turn of events. A grainy video shot from a phone that was obviously taken without permission showed Cameron and Chrissy having a private conversation off to the side. The body language was intimate, not romantic, but too close. Chrissy leaned in as Cam whispered something. The video was leaked from a recent music video shoot where both of them were reportedly present. Jim saw it, of course, later that same night when he posted a single set. According to reports, Chrissy's friends tried to contact her, but she wasn't returning calls and her social media accounts were inactive. This was unusual for someone who usually posts on social media, but Cameron remained unfazed, uploading a series of pictures from an old tour of him grinning, while fans flashed jewelry and wrote cryptic messages. Captions like, "Some stories don't need explaining," left fans divided. Were they being deflected by his trolling, or was this all a coincidence? In any case, his refusal to deny or defend only strengthened the suspicion that behind closed doors, Jim's once close-knit and devoted inner circle was disintegrating, with some quietly trying to. Jim's longtime friend claimed on a blog that he had never seen Jim this broken, and that the betrayal came from both his brother and his woman. The emotional weight was evident in Jim's demeanor during a surprise guest appearance at a charity event. Jim wanted to remain neutral so as not to be caught in the crossfire. Energy was replaced by a more subdued and aloof demeanor. When a fan asked him if he was all right, he simply nodded and continued to walk without saying anything or smiling. Then, in yet another shock, a former close friend of Chrissy's, who hadn't spoken to the media in years, came forward and said she had once seen an awkward situation. "I didn't think much of it then," she added, speaking of the conversation between Chrissy and Cam at a private party in 2018. But looking back now, it all makes sense again. Jim felt trapped at last. I'm not naming names, but when you give someone your loyalty and they treat you like a fool, it changes you. It doesn't just hurt, it hardens you. "I'm not the same man I was a month ago." Jim broke his silence once more in a new live video. This time, he wasn't yelling or accusing. Instead, he was calm. Fans watched with their hearts in their throats, and Jim looked exhausted, like a man who cared too much. After just 6 minutes, he finished the live broadcast with just his words and a glance that told it all. His voice cracked once, barely, when he said, "Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the worst," became a pivotal moment when fans who had previously been divided began to unite behind him and support Jim at all costs. Trending celebrities started liking his posts, and some who had remained silent started posting cryptic messages of support. The atmosphere had changed. It was no longer just gossip, it was empathy. People saw a man broken and it touched a nerve. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Chrissy was reportedly trying to contact Jim. According to a source familiar with the matter, she had sent numerous texts and voice messages, attempting to calm things down. But Jim wasn't responding. Some said he wasn't ready, while others thought he was completely stupid. The press began circling blogs that published timelines in an attempt to determine when the alleged affair may have begun, when old interviews were re-examined and examined for hints. For example, when Chrissy smiled at Cam a few too often, and Jim's body language seemed strange, it turned into a digital investigation with fans acting as detectives. While Cam's emotions remained unfiltered, his silence started to work against him. It used to appear as indifference, but now it appeared as avoidance. Fans began asking for clarification, saying, "You owe Jim the truth." Another tweet stated, "Real men don't hide, they speak up." Cammy remained nothing, posting instead a throwback photo of him and Jim from the early days of Die Pet with the message, "Brothers fight, but blood always thicker." This was the first time he made a vague acknowledgement of the situation, and at the very least it exacerbated the division. Was it an attempt to patch things up? Or, instead of engaging, reposting, liking, or commenting, Jim uploaded another cryptic story, this time with the remark, "Sometimes the bond you thought was unbreakable was already broken, you just didn't see it." Was he manipulating? Trying to make peace? Or both? Fans were torn. Then suddenly, a shocking email was published. It was purportedly between Chrissy and her close friend David. Months prior, in which she expressed her emotional disconnection with Jim, and acknowledged that Cam understood her in ways Jim never did. The email wasn't confirmed, but it went viral. Fans of Wildfire felt deceived once more, and even those who had attempted to support Chrissy started to doubt everything. Jim again decided not to respond immediately, but that evening, he shared an old video of him and Cam performing on stage, arms around each other, grinning with the caption, "Those were the days past." That single post was like a funeral for a friendship. Fans interpreted it as a farewell, a silent goodbye to the bomb that once was. As for Chrissy, the pressure became too much. Late one night, she posted a black screen to her story with the words, "Nobody actually knows the complete story. You guys just see pieces." No explanation, no follow-up, but fans were relentless and flooded her DMs. Her comments were, whether it was authentic or not, the public had already made their decision, and Cameron remained silent. So they were the next target. That was all it took to reignite the fire. When Cam finally uploaded a video to the story, it was not a statement, but rather him in the studio bobbing his head to an unreleased song with lyrics that read, "Never trust a heart that flinches when it's time to ride." The message was cryptic, yes, but fans took it as a jab. Thousands of people flooded his most recent post, demanding that he speak up. Another indirect response in a saga already filled with shadows and half-truths. Then, surprisingly, Chrissy broke her silence in a shaky live video. She appeared without makeup, eyes tired, voice trembling. "I know there's been a lot said, and I know people have made up their minds about me," she began. "But not everything you see is the whole story." She said, "People grow apart. Sometimes connections shift. And sometimes what you think is innocent turns into something you can't explain without explicitly refuting the rumors." Although she didn't cry, her voice cracked repeatedly as she concluded the livestream saying, "I love Jim with all my heart. I never wanted to hurt him, but I can't pretend things were perfect when they weren't." Her words were ambiguous, but the feelings behind them were genuine. The internet exploded again. Some fans sympathized with her, saying her live felt sincere. Others accused her of deflecting blame. One comment said she still didn't deny it. "She's just spitting the narrative." Another read, "This ain't an apology. It's a cover-up." Once more, Jim remained silent. No post, no response, just silence. But according to people close to him, he watched the live stream. And when it was over, he just got up and went outside for more than an hour without using his phone or listening to music. Just him and his thoughts. Meanwhile, Cam was apparently unfazed. Insiders said a movement began when a small group of Jim supporters organized a loyalty walk in Harlem with signs that read "Real ones don't cheat" and "Truth over fame." He felt that the situation was overblown and had no plans to clarify anything because he thought the truth would eventually come to light. Until then, he wasn't about to add fuel to the fire, but fans weren't letting it go. Although it wasn't a large-scale demonstration, it garnered media attention and served as a reminder of the extent of the public's emotional investment. Despite all of this, the question of whether Jim would ever forgive them remained unanswered, because although the internet thrives on drama and spectacle, what made this story stand out was its backstory. Jim, Chrissy, and Cam weren't just names. They were a while fans were still processing Chrissy's emotional life. Another twist came like a grenade when an anonymous tipster contacted a well-known gossip blog claiming to have screenshots of messages exchanged. A family is built on years of shared dreams, love, and loyalty. And when that kind of foundation cracks, the pieces don't fall quietly. They shatter, and the sound echoes everywhere. A blurry screenshot of what appeared to be Cam saying, "You know, it was never just a vibe between us," was posted on the blog within hours after Chrissy and Cameron exchanged messages that suggested something more than friendship. Chrissy responded, "Stop. We said we wouldn't talk about that night again." The internet went crazy. Fans were yelling in shock in the comments section, and even celebrities began to react subtly on their own platforms. One rapper wrote in a mysterious tweet, "Some people break bread, others break trust." Although the pictures couldn't be confirmed and the blog itself had a disclaimer, a reality TV celebrity posted a vintage photo of Jim and Chrissy with the message, "Damn, never thought I'd see the day." The idea of that night became a mystery that fans couldn't stop speculating about what actually happened. Was it recent? Did Jim ever know about it before it went public? Jim didn't respond for the third time. The damage had already been done. The public's perception had changed from one of rumor to one of confirmed betrayal directly. But he shared a picture of himself looking out at the skyline with the message, "Angerty doesn't lie." It was a silent, poetic, yet agonizing picture. And that same evening, Chrissy was seen leaving a restaurant with a longtime friend. She was bombarded by paparazzi with questions about the screenshots. Her response was succinct and straightforward, "Believe what you want. I know my truth." Some people interpreted this as defiance, while others saw it as a proud confession. Meanwhile, Cameron remained completely unfazed in public, but noticeably more. He didn't post anything on the internet for 2 days in a row, and when he did, it was just a black screen with the words, "Let the loud ones talk." The fanbase was more divided than ever, and Jim's supporters were supporting him more fervently than ever by reposting old photos of him and Chrissy from their reality show days, tagging them with, "He deserves better." Meanwhile, a smaller but vocal group stood up for Chrissy, claiming that relationships break down for a variety of reasons and that people change. But the voice note leak was what really escalated the drama. The voice note, which was supposedly recorded by a mutual acquaintance who was present during a private disagreement, showed a female voice that was thought to be Chrissy crying and stating, "I didn't mean to fall for him. It just happened. It was supposed to be nothing." The tape was brief, no more than 20 seconds, really sent shockwaves through the fan base because it seemed to confirm that the betrayal was not only emotional, but also romantic and possibly ongoing. For Jim, it was about a love he had built his entire adult life on, and it appeared to have fallen apart due to secrets and mistakes. The following day, Jim finally spoke out, more intimately. He did so through a video that he posted to his own page, rather than a podcast or indirect post.